Yeah, don't let the obstacle be your excuse. Because what you're really gonna hate is like you're gonna resent yourself on the other side of that, and that ain't like a thing that you're gonna be able to like really fight.
You are now listening to The Gradient Radio, an open space to converse about creativity with creatives. And I am your host, Antonio Knoxx. And today we have a special guest. Our guest today is a slick-tongued, sophisticated rapper from Richmond, Virginia. Today, our guest is Chance Fischer, aka Chauncey.
Hey, thanks, man. Oh, man, that's cool. That was a cool little intro.
I appreciate you, bro. So for the people who may not know who you are, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, man. Chauncey is my given birth name, but my mom calls me Chance, so we just kind of roll with Chance now. It's weird because I like never know how to introduce myself in that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm from Richmond. I've pretty much moved through two main disciplines throughout my life. The restaurant hospitality world and the music world. I started in hospitality when I was about 4 years old. My dad's a chef. My mom was actually a nurse, so I was always kind of in this space where I was caring for people. Rap, I started writing poetry when I was 7. When I was growing up, I couldn't really listen. We didn't really listen to rap in the household. It was like super Christian, so we listened to Fred Hammond. I listened to a lot of P-Funk. So I couldn't listen to rap, but I could listen to like what my parents grew up on. And then when I first got exposed to rap, my dad was like, okay, you can listen to Public Enemy. So I was listening to Chuck D.
Wow.
Flavor Flav before Flavor of Love. First album that I bought with my own money was Mystical Let's Get Ready. So
okay. And
I bought the unedited version. So
wow.
God was judging me for that. But yeah, man, moved around, went to school here in the city. I'm from what we used to call the West End. It's not what people call now, but from Randolph. Grew up kind of West End bottom. Shout out to all the homies from over there. Shout out to my main man Steve, who's still holding it down. And between there and Carver, my grandmother lived in Carver, so when I wasn't home, I would like be with my grandma and my granddad. I left. I ended up going to college for hospitality, attended Cornell up in Ithaca, New York, and went to their hotel school. I really didn't initially want to go to college, so I applied to college on Christmas Day, and I applied to Cornell and Brown. Then I said, if I don't get in either one of these, I'm not going to go. I was just going to start a business. I've always been kind of on my own wave with that, like whatever other people were telling me, like, all right, cool, believe enough in myself. Moved from there, worked in a lot of luxury hotels, have opened particular spots. We're in Common House, so the opening GM here at Common House. I opened Cigar and Whiskey Lounge, moved into a lot of different like strategic consulting after that. But yeah, man, right now, really just making music and helping other people like open businesses. That's me.
You know, I definitely look at you as when I found out you were in the hospitality world, because we met as a rapper, like in the art scene. So when we started to follow each other, then I saw that like during the day you had a day job and at night you had like a different job. And I was like, this man is like Batman, right? Like you're Bruce Wayne and Batman, because your worlds are like vastly different. And I was like, yo, like this is really interesting.
It's funny that you say that, because that's I wrote my college essay on the similarities between me and Batman.
Really?
Like, yeah, hilarious. So
tell me, do you remember some of it or?
Yeah, it was mostly like around this whole like socialite kind of situation. Like I said, like even right now, like I'm so nervous to be on camera, like, you would never believe
you can't even tell. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm over here, like my foot is tapping right now. But I've always kind of been like around people and moving through crowds and some kind of leader in some way. Wasn't necessarily the thing I was looking forward to do, but there was either some vacancy there and I just kind of like rose to it. I've always been the one that's kind of like listening to people and moving that way. So there's that. And then there was this piece of like me struggling and like figuring out what my life was going to be. So I'm like this like super student in the daytime, and then at home I'm like the rapper, or I got the homies who I'm just like, hey, what's going on? Or like, hey, my homie's about to go do a bid, or we fighting in the, we fighting in the hood.
Yeah.
That side of it. So just kind of like balancing those two things. And even when I didn't, like, I'm not like wealthy by any means, and never have been, but I've had access to a lot of different circles like that. So being in those circles and being able to kind of maneuver in that way, and then coming back to being this person who's like coming out of poverty, right? And coming out of like just kind of growing up seeing crazy, everything that a person could see that you probably shouldn't at a young age, just kind of like moving through that. And both of these being like this duality of a person, and both of these being very much uniquely me, right?
Yeah.
So that was it.
So with you being a little bit nervous right now, how does that nervousness translate, or do you transcend the nervousness when you get on stage, when you perform? So the funny thing about being on stage is I feel like I'm most comfortable because I feel like I'm most myself when I'm on stage. And I think it's a control thing. Like I have control over like where we go in the room. But if I'm like in a room, it's weird. I never feel out of place in a room, but it's more of, I feel like rooms can be stale and nothing is kind of moving forward. And then I feel like we all are like in this same awkwardness, and we don't have to be. And I feel like nothing is kind of like moving forward, right? And I think part of, man, this is about to get real deep. Nah, go ahead.
But like I usually use humor or something around that, get people laughing and kind of get everybody on the same page so that we can have somebody talking. And maybe I think that could have been initially a defense of keeping people from like knowing a lot about me, because then I can like drive and facilitate the conversation, but people would never have to like ask me anything, right? So that's kind of like how I maneuvered for a long time. But being on stage, I'm never nervous as much about being on stage. I'm more concerned about what do people get when they leave, right? So if there's anything that I'm nervous about, it's giving people value when I'm on that stage, but not nervous to be in front of people that way. I think I'm just, if I am nervous, it's about like being on camera is weird. I'm like, yo, how am I supposed to be? Like, what do I do with my hands? Stuff like that.
Facts.
Did I say the wrong thing? Or just like nervous about being in rooms where I don't know what other people's motives are, and afraid of being like, because I'm going to be genuine.
For sure.
And I think it's more of like, I'm afraid of being taken advantage of in that way. So like finding a way to like protect against that, finding out like who's who, or the fact that sometimes I really don't hold my tongue on how I feel.
For sure.
So I'll scan the room and kind of have a perception of people. And then I'm like, well, what can I say? What can't I say? Like those are the things. I'm nervous about being like misinterpreted, and I'm nervous about I think being taken advantage of in that way. So that's that.
Yeah. No, I think, because obviously we talked like over the years, and typically it was more so about like the creative side. I think from my last talk that we had back in September, I realized like how empathetic you are to like other people, despite like all of the things that you've gone through. And I really took the empathy aspect of like really caring about like how another person feels, and like really listening to them. Because in that moment when we were talking the whole time, I was like, man, like, like you really, I could see that like just exuding out of you. Really, where did you like learn that from?
Yeah, I think a lot of from like not being. So I've always been like this kind of like high achieving like student or whatever, but not because I was going out of my way to be that person. More of like I found things that I was like really interested in, and I questioned everything like throughout my life, the why, and I kept coming back to like, well, what is the core? What is the root of this thing? And people would say certain words, and I'm just like, well, it doesn't align with the actions. And then kind of like growing up, not really being able to like have people over. Our house, like I kind of like grew up in a hoarder house in that way. So, part of me moving into even hospitality was like creating a place where people felt welcome. For me, it was a lot of, I had so many interests and I kept being exposed to so many places, mostly because I wanted to get away, right? Like even all of the organizations that I ended up joining in high school, like they all had trips, right? So I could find some kind of sponsorship or like find a way to get it or like hustle my own way. So I could just get out of Richmond because I wanted to see like what wasn't in Richmond. My dad had that being in the military, right? My brother's in the military too. I'm like the only guy in my family that wasn't military. And it wasn't because I didn't want to go, like I would have been a Marine, right? Because I'm crazy. But it was this piece of just kind of like wanting to like find out more and like find the core of things. And as I came back to it, what I kept finding out was that people really weren't listening to folks, right? But they kept doing this lip service of, like check on people or, hey, are you okay? Like, are you good? And I kept seeing like homies go through stuff and nobody was really like their own parents, like weren't even like, so when I wanted to create a space where like folks felt welcome, like shout out to DJ Mark for this. So DJ Mark had a spot called Footwork back in the day. And I ended up like talking to him a lot about it. And he was like, it was never meant to sell shoes. It was a space where like people could like gather and convene. I started thinking about places where I felt comfortable, where I didn't feel comfortable. I started thinking a lot about like all of the rooms that I had access to where I was the only one. And folks automatically assuming that I was like this token black kid, right? Like that I was there. And the idea of code switching, like all of these things kept coming up, and it was just like feeling uncomfortable on different levels from a cultural way, from a social way. So how do I create a space where like people can feel comfortable? And one of the main spaces is like getting over your own self, right? Like you can't do something that somebody wants. And it kept happening to me. Like people assumed the things that I wanted, and it would happen in some family conversations, right? Like you wouldn't see somebody for a while and then they would be like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you really care how I'm doing? Or like, and I know that you care about me, but do you care how I'm doing? Or like, are you having this conversation because it's just like the polite thing to do, right? And I just kept searching for kind of like, what is real, and the deeper, like when I was growing up, I read a lot of philosophy. So again, like I said, I've questioned everything, right? And one of the main things that I question is like, do people care about people, or do they care about showing enough so that they can absolve themselves of responsibility if something happens, right? Like we've been having this conversation a lot about like, folks taking their own lives, right? And the main thing being like check on folks, or like, like folks will be like, hey, you can call me. But I'm like, yo, if you ever like, I remember being depressed as hell in college, right? I won't call in nobody. I won't check on nobody. I wasn't leaving my room. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might not even get food. What make you think I'm about to pick up the phone and do work? Like, if me getting out of my own bed is too much work, I'm about to call you. Nah, bro. Like, it don't work that way. So, like, figuring out, like, what does care actually look like was extremely important to me, and listening ended up being like the common denominator that I found. And I think I got that a lot. I mean, my grandma is a really great example of that, right? Like, was never the person who was trying to impart her opinion. Like I could share it, and I have. Like my grandmother knows literally everything about me. Like even if I had a pregnancy scare, right? Like I'd call my grandma and be like, I'm scared, I don't know. And she would be like, she would just give me advice and guide me through it. And it wouldn't be on a, like, I'm judging you in this way, right? So this idea of like, what does like pure empathy feel like? What does care truly feel like? And the work is the listening part. And the older I get, and maybe it makes me cynical, but I just feel like folks really don't care in that way. And there's like this purity in it. And when you like come across folks who do like feel that way, you can feel the energy. And I think that's why we connected a lot, right? Like the care, like the passion that you're putting into like having like actual meaning behind things. Like for me, I think it started just from not knowing what true or me not knowing what true care felt like, or like trying to find it. I'm trying to find examples of that. And then knowing what it felt like to kind of like be misunderstood in different spaces, and then navigating those different spaces and being like, man, I hope that I don't have to replicate. I hope no one else has to feel this way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, for music, do you remember that moment you were like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into this. I'm going to like, speak my truth and,
Yeah, I do, because it came from that time. It actually came from that time where I was like super depressed. And it was like junior year in college. And it's crazy because like I've been rapping for such a long time, like all of the homies, like I had my first group with my homeboy Juan Pierce. Shout out to Juan, like huge promoter, like one of my, honestly, Juan is probably, if not the smartest person I know, like one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. And like my true inner circle are people who are like extremely intelligent and inspirational. And Juan grabbed me. We had this group called MBF, and it was called Natural Born Flows. And it was cool. Rest in peace to my homie Ryan, who was like a big influence on me. So I was rapping and I was battling, like as early as like 12, I was like 12, 14. But I just felt like it wasn't something that I felt like I had so many things in me. There's like this war in me of things that I was trying to prove, right? And I felt like even though I loved this thing, I couldn't go, because I was still at that point where I was trying to fight everything and I was trying to like overcome all of like what people had expected from me. Like even ex-girlfriends were like on some like, I had one ex who was just like, you didn't get in the corner. I was like, nah, I did, right? And it was just like this fight, and I was like living this life for other people in a way. Like my success was spiteful, right? Like I talk about that a lot. And I didn't really have a point of looking at music. It was always something that I came back to. I always wrote, always had verses, right? But it wasn't until I got like it felt like everything was ripped from me, that I like sat down and I was just like, this is what I want to do. And one of the promises that I made to myself was, I felt like since I was like fighting so many things that I couldn't complete anything. Like I felt like I was just like throwing these darts at the wall, but like I couldn't get anything finished. So one of the main things that had me record like my first project, like full length, was to prove to myself that in that time that I was like that down, that I could complete something, right? Like that was the main thing. It wasn't even to show people that I could rap or anything like that. Like, honestly, like on the rapping side, I always was just like, I'm nice. And if you don't know that I'm nice, it's just like, you'll find out. I just really didn't. I never, even when I was just like kind of like about it, I think I wanted more of other people's respect, but it was never a question of like, am I not dope? It's like, I'm dope, but it's just like, are you telling me I'm dope because you like feel a particular way? But yeah, I was like super down. I hadn't left my room in like a week. Hadn't really like, all my blinds were down, hadn't really like turned the lights on. There were like days where like I wasn't even using the bathroom outside. It got wild. And I started like just writing from there. And that was the thing. And it wasn't even for like therapy either. It was to like kind of regain a grasp of myself. Like I felt like I lost me, which is crazy because I'm actually I think I'm having a second iteration of that in my life right now, where I'm just kind of like, what are the things that I like? How have I grown? And like taking that time to like, I've changed and the things that I thought I wanted are different now, right? So I got to that. I remember calling my dad, telling him that I wanted to rap, and him being like, we're not like paying this money for you to rap. And he eventually like ended up. My dad's one of like my biggest supporters. My mom is too, especially like on the music side, right? Like my mom's side of the family is like super big in art. So it was interesting. It wasn't until they like actually heard the work where they were like, oh no, he's not joking. Like he's really like dope, right? So that was the thing. But yeah, that really came from me slipping and feeling like I was losing myself. And I felt like one of the only things that was where I was most honest was in my work, right? Like that's it.
Yeah. And I can imagine the way that you write translate into like what you write in your private time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think my music is like some of it's just, I mean, it's just like classic like rap. You know, like sure. I'm a purist in that. That's not like the music that inspired me, you know. Like
so I grew up on what music? Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah,
I grew up on like a lot of like Cash Money, No Limit. You feel me? Like that was the stuff. And then when I started like really getting into the battle side, it wasn't until like I met like other people that like I was listening to stuff like Cannabis. I was listening to Big Pun. It took me a while to like get into Jay, right?
Okay.
And now like I'm like I love Jay, right?
Really?
But it was like a minute where I was just I had only heard like the commercial records and I wasn't like giving him credit. But yeah, nah, bro. Like if you asked me to like start rapping a Squad Up mixtape, you know, I'll be more on that. There's a time when like Turk was my favorite rapper. You know, it was just a Mystical. Like I told you, the first CD that I bought was Mystical. Let's Get Ready. Then that's a crazy. Like that man was like really rapping. You feel me? But
did that come out during it? Did you buy it when it came out, or you went to buy it like when you had money?
No, I bought it when it came out.
Okay.
Yeah, bro. Like the wild thing about me when I was growing up, like I always had money. Like even if it was just like we weren't rich, but like, you know, you get like birthday money or whatever.
For sure, yeah.
Like I used to just always just like find a way to like save my money. Like I wouldn't get excited about something and like go buy it. Like I would wait till I had enough things and then I would like figure it out because I love the idea. Like I just saw us not having money and I was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna have bread because I don't need what did I need? I didn't need a whole lot. And then when it got to the point where like I really wanted to be like fresh, like yeah, I like found different ways to hustle. Found any way that I could hustle at any point, you know. So I always kept money that way. But yeah, I bought it with my own bread. And was like super, super excited about it. I got it on sale, you know, so that was tight. But yeah, like that was the stuff that kind of inspired me, you know, when I was growing up and making stuff or whatever. But
yeah, I think that's a great question to like ask people in general. Like, what was the first album that you bought? Because it really tells you about like that person and how like they really, really wanted that album or how much respect they have for like that particular artist. Like my first one was Watch the Throne. That was my first
album you purchased.
That's my first album that I bought. I think that came out like 2010 or 2011.
So wait, like you weren't buying?
Nah.
Oh no, you gotta tell me about that. Like, what was the reason for that?
Watch the Throne. So like, I got my first credit card.
No, let's stop. What was the first reason? So wait, other people were buying music for you? Or is that what you're saying? Okay, cool.
My mother was buying me. Like I was always a computer guy, so it was for me. It was more so like downloading music illegally, you know, from like LimeWire and all of that.
That's fair.
So it wasn't. But like when LimeWire went away and I had my own money, my own credit card. Like I was only supposed to use that credit card for like gas. But Watch the Throne came out. I heard Otis. I heard Niggas in Paris, and I was like, "Yo, I gotta get this." That was a moment. And I wish that I had more money at that time because I would have loved to go to like one of those concerts, bro. Like just seeing them on Tumblr at the time, bro. Like that joint was just so crazy to me.
I don't want to like get off track. Like, but the crazy sidebar is I love that album like so much. And I felt like it got like so much criticism about it being kind of like this super, almost like the super lavish, like anti-black kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like there's a lot of black truth in that album, you know, especially like when you like listen to some like Murder to Excellence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then you listen to a record like what's the record? LOL, White America, assassinate my
character.
What is why can I not think of, that's my favorite song on the joint. Why can I not think of course I can't think of the name on camera or whatever, you know, but like sitting there, like listening to these, it's just like, it's so proud in a way that isn't like, it's not this pride that comes from this like state of weakness kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we've been bored, we've been doing this. It's like, nah, like we here and you got to deal with it, you know? Mm-hmm. And again, like, I'm not saying that, you know, this works for like there's so many other like small pieces like that are like social and political here that are right. Like there are treatises on that piece. But I think that there was just something about that where it's just like, it was just like arrogant in a way that it was just like, I don't care. Like, these are the things that are happening in society. And it's like, yeah, this is a problem. And still, like, we triumphant in spite of that. Like, that's what that project felt like for me. So, that's a crazy album to be your first one to buy.
Yeah, no, that joint, like, when I heard it, it felt like wealth. Like, it felt like wealth to me. It felt like opulence. It felt like decadence. Everything they said in the album, it felt exactly like that. And I'm like, yo, like, if I can feel this, like, yo, like, I played that joint, like, from front to back.
Mm-hmm. It almost felt like, I felt like we deserved that, right? Like, it wasn't I guess my thing with that is, like, it didn't feel like people flossing to gain the attention of somebody else. It's just like, nah, bro, like, we dope. Yeah. And you can be too, and you should be. Yeah. And we should all like have this. And I was just like, yeah, that's kind of fire. Yeah. Like, you know, now of course, like maybe that's like not what you want to listen to. I mean, I've always thought that there's this piece of rap that's like aspirational. Like Juicy is a great record. That's a great solo record because it talks about like the idea of like being poor and having nothing, but also like and other side of that, right? And like not on this grass is greener piece, right? It's more of like, this is what you can be like in the maturation of yours, if that's what you want. Like if that's like your definition of success, or even that's not the sole definition, but that's like a part of it. Like you didn't have I've always like criticized capitalism, not so much for it being like detrimental, but for like the people, not everybody was given equal access to capitalism, right? Facts. So like we're here, like it is detrimental to a lot of people. I'm not saying like just like in theory, but I feel like it's detrimental to a lot of people because the folks who were able to participate in capitalism purposefully left other people out of it, right? Like I think that's the piece of it that makes it weird. So like when you hear these songs that are aspirational, like sometimes I want to hear that I can relate to somebody in the struggle. And sometimes I want to see something else that's like to aspire to. And maybe I don't want to be a basketball player, and maybe I don't want to be a drug dealer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's like something different for me to aspire to. Like, I don't think that I want to criticize rap on that. I think I would rather criticize like, how are we like getting information to people about other things that they can be, other things that can inspire them, right? Like as young kids, like what other things are we telling them? Like who are Black CEOs? Like who are like Black thought leaders, right? Who are Black activists? Like, and just give them like the true freedom is like having the ability to like pick and choose, but having enough access and exposure to that thing, right? So yeah, of course, like if you got like folks who like traditionally didn't have shit and now they rapping, you know, like that's what they're gonna talk about, right? But I don't think that like we should necessarily just fully be shaming people for that. Like it's just kind of a response to the system that like put them through that, right? Like everybody should be critiqued, but like when I heard the album, it just felt a lot like damn, like this is giving people something to aspire to.
Yeah.
Like early Bad Boy,
Facts,
right? Like it just felt like I ain't ever want to wear a shiny suit, but like the idea of just like, damn, you know, this man looked like platinum. He talking about platinum and he looked like platinum. Like that's crazy. Them Hype Williams videos, like the budgets for those videos are crazy, right? But it was just like, it felt like the idea is that I feel like I can be something bigger than myself. And if I never have anything around me that kind of like gives me that, you know, like that, we have to respect that, at the very least for that, right? Like, my bad. Like, I got for that.
I mean, you hit it on the head. Like, it definitely exposed like so many people, especially me, to like just different things I didn't know existed. Like, I didn't know the term Black excellence existed. I didn't know about like luxury brands. I didn't know about all of these things because that wasn't like a place that I came from or just like even knew existed. But like when I heard these records, I saw these like videos. I'm like, yo, like it's a completely different world out there. And at the same time, where Tumblr was like popping too, I would see all of these images. I'm like, yo, like the world is bigger. Like how you said, like you knew you wanted to get out of Richmond because of the things that were happening in like your world. For me, I was just like always like, I used to be a Stoop Kid.
Okay.
I used to be the Stoop Kid. I wouldn't leave my house. I wouldn't go anywhere. I would go to school, come back home, go to school, come back home on the weekends. I would stay on my computer, but that's how I really became good at like the stuff that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But like at the time I was a Stoop Kid. I didn't know about like anything else. So like when I heard this record, it just like exploded my mind. Like when the internet started to pop off, like exploded my mind. I'm like, yo, like that's why I wanted that joint so badly. Even though I knew that card that I had was for gas only. And I was like, man, nah, like I'm going to get this deluxe version. If I'm going to pay, like, because I had to pay the money back, obviously. If I'm going to pay for this, like I'm going to get the best version that I wanted. And I went for it. And that joint like just changed my life.
And I think, yo, there's something to be said here. So it's just like, we're so quick to, like, my critique has always been on, like, the Black middle class. Like, because there's, like, the first people to just be like, oh, you can do this too. Like, you can, like, pick yourself up out of bootstraps. And it just kind of, like, follows this weird, like, Reaganomics policy. And I always thought that was crazy. And then this, like, idea of, like, Black intellectualism and, like, everybody else kind of being, because they don't have the same knowledge or didn't do, like, the same reading as, like, other folks that immediately like, well, you're ignorant, you shouldn't do this, right? And it's just kind of, and don't get me wrong, like, read, bro, like, read. It is the most powerful thing that you can do, right?
Facts.
But how did you get access to that information? Like, if I didn't major in this thing, right? And I was in a thing, like, and I had, like, people got real life that's going on too, right? And how trauma affects them or pushes them in a particular way. Maybe it pushed you to become an activist, but it pushed this person to become a banker. And y'all could have grown up in the same space, right?
Yeah.
Like how it pushed you, I think should be more of like an actual open dialogue instead of criticizing what you became, right? Like, I think like that's the piece of this that's interesting. Like when I look at a thing, before I judge it, I'm more like, who does this speak to? Because Cash Money spoke to me.
Yeah.
You know, like I couldn't relate to nobody. I could, Wayne looked like people I knew. You feel me? Like Turk looked like people I knew. Master P, like I'm looking at them gold glasses, you know, them gold glasses. Like I know, like this looked like everybody from around here. You know what I'm saying? Like I could relate to that in a way that was more like, oh, like here are these like crazy lyrics. It's just like, oh yeah, you did a song backwards. Who does that speak? Like, what does that do? Like, this is like rapping for rap. You know, it's just like the dude that just like works out all the time or whatever, just so that the other man can come over here and be like, yeah, truly ripped, bro. But like he's saying that he's like working out for the chick, but the chick don't care about your striation. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, yo, what does the thing speak to? And instead of like criticizing like the outcome of it, like how do we use these spaces to find out what this common denominator is and saying like, hey, this common denominator gave us all of these outcomes. And then where do we find like places where we can like find our own like concessions, right? Yeah. Like I think that there's like we're so angry at, oh man, like this is what you're doing with your time, or this is what you chose to do, right? Instead of being like, how or why, you know. And I think, and this goes back to what we're talking about with the empathy piece, right? Right? Like, I want to listen to how you arrived here, as opposed to, like, you know, that saying, you know, I don't want to hear that bullshit, Sharif. Like, it's kind of, it's funny, but it's also like, yeah, bro, like, my ribs touching, I'm trying to figure this thing out. And like, yeah, I know I shouldn't be doing like what I'm doing. And I know this is going to cause me pain. It's going to cause my family pain. It's going to cause somebody else pain. But like, at the end of the day, like, what keeps me alive and motivated, right? And like that's a big thing, you know? Like, are we having these like existential philosophical conversations with ourselves about like saving the world? Are you, just because you like can think in a great way, are you required to save the world? You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's not your goal, if you just wanted to get your mama a house because she never had anything, you never had anything, you got that, and that's what you did with your money, is like, is that bad? Like, why is that, you know, why is that bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we there? Why are we in these spaces? So again, like, I feel like we're extremely critical of like what's happening with, and I mean, I'm using an album like Watch the Throne because it's got a gold cover, bro. Yeah. You know, but what exactly, like, what is the outcome that we hope to achieve? And if we truly like want like progression and unity, or I don't even know that I want unity more so than I want people to be able to like freely have diversity of thought, and that be something that's like openly welcome in the community. Because like, I don't need Black people to be a monolith. I need their freedom. I need them to have freedom to exist in the way that they want to exist. Like, that's what's taken from you. You feel me? So like, if you're like, it don't matter what you do, these other people gonna look at you the same way, but you also like move as a monolithic, like, nah, bro, like, I don't want unity. I want clarity. I want us to be on the same page. I want equal access to information. And we like do something with that, right? Like, I think that's extremely important, you know. But like, if we quick to like judge ourselves and move forward, like, come on, bro, like, we already like ain't got the leg to move. But facts. My bad. I'm like super passionate, so I'll talk about that all day.
You're good, bro.
I'm sorry, but yeah.
What was where were your emotions from the first project to your second project? Because once you realize that like you can obviously finish a project, you can have a thought, put it down on wax, quotes, but then once you finish that project, what was the process of like doing the next one? Like, did you have like more confidence because you knew you were able to?
Second project came from people who heard the first one, and then I was able to link up with a few people. Shout out to my boy Jay Cannon, who is, we don't even get to speak as much as I would love to these days, but extreme influence on me. Was big in getting that project together, produced a lot from scratch. Like, I mean, we recorded that in like 22 hours or something like that, all like one studio session. Like, we're just like going back and forth. Like, I would close my eyes on the couch, listen to him making a thing while I was writing it, and I would get up before the beats were even done. I would just like start rapping on like whatever like the loop kind of pattern was for it. My manager at the time was my boy Von Moss, who is my guy. And then we had my man Justin Tinsley, who a lot of people I think know from like ESPN and Undefeated now. Shout out the Tins. We had a lot of people who were like in the corner and using our collective, like, I'd say like connections and resources to move forward. So the second project ended up being this thing called the Lucky Libra. I wanted to drop something on my birthday. I'm October 21st and be super Libra. We got Upper Playground to sponsor it, and that was like one of my favorite brands at the time. So they sent me like a ton of shirts, and they were like cool with like just like working with, I love what they were doing with like exposing like artists that were like coming up in the Bay and like giving them like this kind of like platform as t-shirts for a canvas for them. My homegirl Imani did the cover. She has a architecture firm called Revision Studios right now. So like check that out. It was just a lot of us kind of coming together and being like, all right, let's do something. But it was supposed to be more of like a mixtape than it was like a project. I think it ended up being like 7 records. There were like a lot. We played around with a lot of things. I think like the first like ballad kind of record I did was on there. There was just a lot of energy there and a lot of like we wanted to build momentum and keep momentum and start like talking to, I think like some of the blogs that like reached out and recognized us and moved. So yeah, there was just like this, it kind of felt like we had to, you know? And then when we, like, I was like, I don't know if we can get Upper Playground to sponsor it. And my man at the time, Jason, like reached out and we got that set up. Ended up doing a whole show in the Bay. Rafael Cazal was on that show. Mo Green was on that show. D Sharp, my man, who's my guy. He's the DJ for Golden State Warriors now. It's just like super solid dude. Like all of us were able to just kind of like link, and it was just a super dope connection. Led to me kind of like moving around the Bay and just like making some like good. I don't know. It was just like the second project didn't feel like it came out of necessity. The second project was more like, nah, bro, I'm a rap. And then I'm also gonna like, I'm going to make music that I want to make. So it was like the first one where I was like playing around with like different synth sounds and stuff like that. Just kind of inspired by like music that I love to listen to. So I was listening to like Swedish pop music at the time. It was like a big thing. I was listening to a lot of like random like British like punk and like garage kind of music. Not everything on the project sounds like that, but those are like just kind of like the things that are moving. It just felt, I think we were all just kind of like happy. Like everybody around was just like, all right, let's fuck it. Like that's really, the second project was really, fuck it. Let's put our feet on the gas and then move. I think it was the third project that really ended up being more of like the one where we were all like, this is what a complete body of work should sound like. But yeah, that second project was just like, bam, we going. You know, it was tight. I was doing like all these freestyles around the time. I was like sending stuff out. You know, I think that was the record that I got Nick F on, and I was just like super excited. Like I was basically just standing back and I was taking as many shots as I could. I'm like, all right, well, this is where I want to jump to. So let's just reach out. And I was just like, if I don't get it, I don't get it. But what if I do, right? Like there's part of me that, you know, as I started to like get more into the work world, I like lost this piece of myself that was, I've always just kind of been like, super defiant, bro. Like I've been like ridiculously defiant and almost like choose hard paths on purpose just to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it this way. Even if that ain't the way I want to do it, it's just like, but nah, cause I can't, right? Like it's so insane and like so stubborn in those ways. And that second project is just like, that like there's the one of the first bars is my life is a movie, excuse my ego, stunting so hard I forgot I played a lead role. And it's just like, you know, like boat shoes on, I can't even fucking swim, dreaming of a yacht, I can't even pay the rent. Like it's just like, wow, it was just it's just a lot of braggadocio and I don't know, it was cool. That was it, yeah, man.
So was it the second album where you actually started to perform on stage, or did you perform on stage with the first album?
No, we did some performances with the first project. That was when I like first came back to Richmond for a winter, and Octavian and Kane, when they were doing Slapdash, they like put me on the show. We did a show in the Camel, and it was cool. And we were just like working on some joints. I was like, that was still the time where I was like working on a lot of new music that was just very big at the time, like very like theatrical. Like I've always like wanted like, I like really big, grandiose music. I like big choral music. I like heavy drums. I also like very chill music too. It's weird, but like, again, I was still on this rampage of just like warring with everything, you know? So like even in my expression, it's just like, what's the biggest stuff that we got? So yeah, at that time, I like got to like play a couple of those records on stage or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that was... I started with the first one. Second project, I was able to do a little. I think those were the records where, I had the Mac Miller show. The first sold out show I did was opening for Mac Miller. We were at State Street Theater up in New York. was a great show. Like, and those dudes are clowns. Like, they're like all clown. Like Tree J was like there, everything like that. That's when they were still like moving around with like the cameras. I think Kool-Aid and Frozen Pizza like just come out and that kind of stuff. And then yeah, we did the Big Crit show that time. Big Crit, Freddie, crazy. The Return Forever tour, which was like Big Crit, Freddie Gibbs, Jackie Chan. Who else was on that bill? Something wild. Wally Sparks was DJing for us. So like my boy Tinsley and Wally Sparks were like real good. So like I like, got to like reach out to them. First time I met Freddie, super chill dude. Like Freddie would like sit back and chill. Like yeah, man, that was such an interesting time. So yeah, that's when I started to like focus a little bit more. I started to study too. So like when I came back here, I would like watch people. I wasn't going to as many like live shows as I could see. So there's always like a couple folks I shout out. I shout out Doda Paperboy from Petersburg. I saw his live show, like changed my life. Kane from Nova, but who's down. He lives in Richmond now. It's my guy. I saw his live show. My man Rep, saw his live show. It changed my life. And Bravo. Like those are like the four people, like when I tell folks like I was here studying, I like felt something, and they all had different pieces to like what made them compelling, but they like took a room. And one of the things that like I've always like been big on when I do shows is like want to leave with the room, you know, like, and maybe we alter how we do the song or whatever, but it's just like I ain't getting them there to just like chill and do them records.
For
like
sure,
we're gonna take the room. So that was the time where I like really started studying other people at the time too.
Yeah.
And I watched a lot of stand-up comedy because I was just like, yo, comedians take a room with no music. And like how do you do that? Like how do you like get people to become enveloped in who you are? So yeah, that's around in the first project. Second project is when I got like really serious about that.
That's crazy to hear that perspective, because I know like when I do research from time to time, I do research on like every single thing. Mm-hmm. And usually it's never like the big thing that really captivates me. It's like usually like the small thing that somebody does, like the small detail that I can like incorporate it in how it changes my entire life. It seems like it was the same thing for you.
Yeah, like I mean, I got down to like even how are people breathing?
Yeah,
you know, how are people training? And so like I found out like Talib Kweli was running, and he was like practicing his verses while he was running. So started running, started practicing my verses there. Figured out like how to breathe and pace certain things. Started to like look at what people's pre-show routines were. How people took care of their voice was a big thing. Like when I first started, like I was yelling a lot, and I was, cause you know, like I said, I was like fighting everything. But then looking at how singers like took care of their voice, and like you would see these crazy writers, and I need the room and this thing or this humidity, but it's really because like the voice is a fickle instrument, right? It's like very delicate, so anything could set it off. Like lemon in your tea the day of versus lemon in your tea the day before. Like the acid could like dry you out. Drinking ice cold water is gonna like kind of like kill your vocal cords, right? So like making sure that's open, right? Like learning about stuff like that. Just kind of became like a super nerd about those things.
Really, I love ice cold water.
It's great after you get off stage, but yeah, man.
Yeah,
you know, there was a point where I was only like drinking warm beverages, like, and I was just like eating soup. It was a really weird time. That was a really weird time. I don't know. My stomach will probably never forgive me for that, but we're there. Yeah. Man.
So has like the two worlds like ever blended itself with each other at one point? Whether like you were being like Batman and Superman, have they like ever like merged at one point, or were they like close to coming together?
I think now more than ever, because I think I was just as successful in music as I was in hospitality, and it wasn't like you just knew one or the other. It's just like kind of you found out both. I started like bringing in like beverage tastings to like all of the shows that I would throw. I'd have a beverage tasting component to the beginning of it and like show that like kind of like equal part. When I was battling, I got to talk a little bit more about like how I grew up or whatever. It's like when I battle, like I get to like actually talk about certain stuff. But like if you ever like hear me like, you won't hear me talk about like street shit in my music. Like you might hear me like talk about like the effects and stuff like that, but I ain't about like promoting people. We happy to be alive. Like a lot of the homies happy to be alive. So like that's it. So I don't even like bring that piece of it in. But on the other side of like that growth and like coming from like a state of poverty and what that looks like, that's been a lot of my work for. Like I'm on a nonprofit I'm on the board of a nonprofit that's focused on expanding Black and brown people's voices in the wine world. So every kind of course of what I've done is for the equality piece of it. And even when I would throw shows, like I would never like have somebody do the pay to play thing. I would always just like have money and like pay people for the time that they had. And then I would go up to them and be like, yo, like you made this much money for this amount of time. So next time like you go to like negotiate or like say what your rate is, you can actually say like, this is what I did last time and like add more into it. Like I've always been like, all right, labels are going to try to take this away from you, but I know these things, you know, like even when we had like label deals on the table before, I was just like, I can make this money. Like the opportunity cost of me like not working this week is like, I can make this bread doing this. Why would I like go over here to do this and I still got to do the same amount of work? Nah, it just didn't make sense. You know, and I had a lot of things that kept not making sense. And then I was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna just talk to the homies. Like, these are ways to make bread. This is like how you like expand yourself. Like, these are the ways to increase your value proposition. So like, those are the ways like that is starting to blend for me. And every manager that I had, like we worked together as kind of like a creative partnership. So we'd find ways to make plays to like make bread or like get sponsorships and things like that. So the deeper I got into music and the more like I focused on me as, I hate to say a brand, but like at least is like, but yeah, I mean like as a brand, like as like what my identity is. Like you're not finna get over on me, you know what I'm saying? Like you're not about to like bring me some crazy terms. Like I'm gonna sit over here and be like, this is crazy. This is what you're missing out. Like this is like how we're gonna get this bread, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, like, you know, finding ways to be like, all right, cool. You can go make your own wine, right? And you can start that now. Like you don't need some like big endorsement. Like you can create these plays for yourself. So yeah, man, I think just like the more I started to make plays, like the more I started to put those things together and make it make sense.
Yeah. So what were like the trials and tribulations during your journey?
We still have them.
Say are.
I mean, again, like capital is always like probably going to be the biggest one. And I mean, I had a lot of responsibilities outside of, I don't want to go into too much detail on that, but there were a lot of responsibilities that I had outside of just like making music or whatever. But for me, like I had like a particular quality that I wanted. So I was only working with certain people, you know, and I only wanted to like, so I would like pay this money. I was like paying for studio time and honestly, just the work-life balance piece of it, because I was working a lot, and then I like ended up being in huge management roles. The money was good there, but again, the time commitment for that. So like finding out that balance, and you know, like on a day where you're like super tired, like still making yourself move, or then asking yourself. I think the biggest trial that I can talk about freely is asking yourself if it's worth it over and over again, or if people are really resonating with the thing that you're doing, or, you know, are you wasting your time kind of thing. And even if you don't feel that way, like, how do you, like, people will be in your ear, you know, so like refining that confidence and grounding yourself into like what you're doing. And we had that conversation about experience, right? But like that's it. I mean, relationships, like in the middle of that, and me also like not being present in my relationships, and like that being its own thing. And again, like, and through all of that, having not healed or dealt with my own underlying issues, and then those things coming out in the relationships that I was in, and like that's unfair to your partner. Like that's super unfair to a partner. Like no partner should ever have to deal with that, right? Like, and I'm the first to admit that, like, yeah, like I really like fucked up on that part, right? But yeah, all of those things, like life doesn't stop, so you gotta kind of be insane. Like, you gotta be crazy to do this. Like, there's no other way around it. Like, people will talk about, like, they'll talk about like people like Kanye being like out of his mind. I'm like, if you a rapper, any kind of musician, any kind of artist, really, but like if you rapping, like, yeah, bro, you're out of your mind. Yeah. You have to be. Like nobody cares, especially like in a market where like it's all oversaturated.
Yeah.
Why? Like what makes you special, right? And that's a fucked up question to some people, but really when you think about it and you go back to the empathy piece of it is people only have a finite amount of time to spend. Why are they spending their time with you? Yeah, you should be able to tell people why they should. And you being nice ain't enough. Like you being like talented isn't enough. Because I got so many other talented options. Like, what is it there? So yeah, like dealing with that, like removing myself from that too. And I'm being able to honestly like have those conversations with myself.
Yeah. I forgot exactly what I was thinking about, but I did come to the conclusion of like, yo, like you really have to be delusional as an artist.
Yeah.
Like you really have to be delusional to be like, yo, like I'm really this good. I'm really this, like you have to like, I can't remember. I wish I remember like vividly what got me to that conclusion. But like one day I was just like sitting and thinking, I was like, man, like you really got to be delusional to be like in this particular field to think that it's going to work out.
Yep. And to see that, like, when nobody else can, like, you know, like you have that vision to be able to see, hey, this is what I'm capable of. And other people being like, yeah, all right. You know, what if you walk into somebody and just say, yeah, I'm going to win a Grammy. And they be like, all right, bro, let me get a number 10. Like, you know, like it's you really do. And
that sounds like a TV show right there.
You know, yeah, I think that should be applauded in a way.
That definitely should be a TV show. Man, it you know, like I said, I think we spoke about it before, just kind of like seeing like your journey of like where we met and to like to see where you're at now. Was there a point where you just like stopped doing music? Because it did seem like at some point it was like just like radio silent.
I didn't stop doing music. I was, if anything, I was recording and I was just like, man, I actually had so many things happen. Like we lost a hard drive, like we had some corrupt files happen. So I had like albums that we like lost a complete album of, right? You know, there's that piece of it. I was always kind of figuring out like how I strategically wanted to position myself and who I wanted to position with. And if I didn't do it a particular way, I just like didn't want to do it. So people were like I had this kind of like perfectionism thing, but it wasn't there was a piece of it where I was like focused on making the music the best sounding that it could get. But then it was like, I'm spending this money like I need it to get as far as it can go. So there was that piece of it. So if anything, I wasn't releasing music, but I didn't really like stop per se. I was always kind of like writing. I didn't write at the pace that I was. And I did hit a point where I felt like I was writing in circles. Like I was blocked. Like I didn't have, basically I got to the point where I felt like I hadn't lived enough life to contribute anything new anymore. And I felt stagnant in my own life and I felt trapped. And I just kind of felt like I was in this circle, like in this endless cycle of being trapped. And I didn't know how to like move through that. So even when I was writing, I didn't feel like it was important or powerful, right? Or if I was writing something, I didn't feel like I could believe it fully, you know? Like, so that's where I was with it. So yeah, it did seem a little bit silent because I kind of got reclusive, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can imagine that you need that from time to time. And, you know, sometimes what we hear with like other artists, sometimes you have to live life sometimes.
Yo, honestly, you should be you should be doing that continuously, right? Like, because what are you giving to people, right? Like you're just empty. And like after a while, like that emptiness is just gonna be bitter. You're just gonna be bitter, right? And that's gonna come out. And if it doesn't come out in your music, it's gonna come out like in your relationships, or it's gonna come out in your interviews. And what does a bitter person have to contribute to the world?
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, I'm not telling people not to, like, I understand it, but it's just like, yo, you gotta, at a certain point, you gotta like figure out, what am I gonna do to not feel this way no more, you know? And I'm not saying that that's easy. That is hard, you know? And part of that is asking for help or telling people where you are, like being vocal about it. You know, I had to get better at that. That was terrible asking for help. Like, even still, like, some days, like, people will be like, what do you need? And I'm like, I can't articulate like exactly the thing. I just know how I feel, right? So moving through that. But yeah, man, that's like, what does a bitter person contribute? Nothing, man. So like, getting past that stage and like finding out that like life is really, I mean, life is the key to everything. Like, you should be finding ways to like live as much of a balanced life as possible, or at least live in the way that you want to live, right? And if not, like, it's gonna be reflected in every single thing that you do. Art should be no different, you know? So yeah, that's where I was. I was just like, all right, I'm stuck, and I feel stuck, and I've already written about being stuck. I need to get unstuck. Like, my priority isn't writing more music about this. My priority is like getting unstuck. Yeah. So
where are you? Where are you at now, and where do you project for yourself to be in the future?
Yeah, I'm in a place where like I let a lot of things go. I quit a lot of things, and get back to just kind of like the core of like writing for the sake of writing, like creating for the sake of creating. I write every day, and I don't like judge if it's good or not. I just like get something that comes from there, and it's basically like rebuilding the muscle of creating. So I'm there, getting back into like just realigning with a lot of folks who I've always wanted to work with, and making sure that like we get that done. I'm working on a lot more strategy, which is going to be very evident soon. About to release a project with DJ Harrison, which we were actually supposed to release in October, and then I caught COVID, and then he went on tour, so like we got caught up. But these records are actually like, they exist, like they exist in the world. They're most of them are fully done, so it's not like we might get there. Like, nah, we've like been recording back to back. Yeah, so that's been cool. And yeah, the next thing is just like purely expressing my art in the ways that I've always wanted to. And I'm finally in the position to do that, right? Like on every level, right? So that's tight. So I'm excited just to see what comes from this. And then I've been sharing my art with people, and it's inspired other people. So they've like reached out to me and they want to work, right? So seeing what their perspectives are on things, and like, that's cool. Yeah, that's just kind of where I'm going, man. Just being open, you know, being open to what's next, being intentional about where I put my time in my art, and then giving back as much as I can, even if it's just like sitting down, talking to people, giving advice, whatever, like just being present in that way. Like, that's where I am, man. Like, and that's where I'm going. So, yeah.
So if you had to leave a last gem for someone who wants to like pursue their passion, they have like so many obstacles in like their lives, and you know they're just trying to figure out a way, what is something that you will leave for them?
Yeah, don't let the obstacle be your excuse, because what you're really gonna hate is like you're gonna resent yourself on the other side of that, and that ain't like a thing that you're gonna be able to like really fight. Like, you can't fight that with like a paycheck, you know. So like, continue to be delusional and move forward, and make yourself a priority. And know that the people around you might not immediately get it, but that's cool. Like, get good at being bad, and remember what it feels like to be bad, and until you're not bad anymore. And then again, like, move forward, make yourself your priority, and continue to be delusional, because what you would really hate is to be on the other side of this, whatever that mythical other side is, and and hate yourself. Period.
Man, I love that. Continue to be delusional.
Yeah, man.
I love that a lot. I resonate with that a lot. Man, thank you, bro.
Yeah, like, absolutely, bro. It's always cool, like hanging out, talking. So.
Man, like I remember like when I first started this, and he was like, "Yo, like when am I gonna be on? When am I gonna be on?" I'm like, "Yo, like eventually, bro." And I'm glad like we had some time to like create this moment.
Yeah, man.
You know, I appreciate like who you are as an individual. Just for like the person that you are, like the person that I've learned to like know over the course of like the years, and especially like I said, like September, like I definitely learned a lot from you, 100%. And I just want to say appreciate you for coming on and giving me your time, because we know people could be anywhere, and so for you to be here right now, it's just like I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Likewise, bro. My name is Antonio Knoxx. That's Chauncey, and this was the Gradient Radio.